What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Time Killers podcast. My name is Neil RIvera, and today I am killing time with Mr. Matthew Field. What is going on, Matt?
Hello, hello. Good evening, everybody.
And I'm also killing time with Mr. Wesley Rivera. What's going on, Wes?
Nothing much. We're just getting bananas here.
Guys, I've got a little bit of a confession to make. I am really struggling to switch into host mode because we're in like the final days of summer vacation here in my house, and I was explaining to Matthew before you jumped on the call, Wesley, that like the inmates are running the asylum at this point. Like I feel like I am Commissioner Gordon and I am just in the middle of Arkham and just all pandemonium is breaking loose.
The breakout is in progress.
So what you do is you look at them in the eyes and you shit in your hand and you smear it on the wall in front of them. You establish dominance.
I mean, that would have worked had my son literally not done that today.
Did he actually?
Minus the smearing it on the wall part, but yeah, no, there was a moment in time where his hand was down his diaper, and I will leave it at that. But despite all that, guys, I'm here.
Like, monkey. I love him.
I'm persevering. We're here, and we're here to talk about video games first and foremost. And there's a big new Nintendo one out on the streets, Donkey Kong Bananza, and we've all played it. We're gonna talk about that, and then we're gonna wrap the show in the back half of the show with just some things that we've been killing time with. So with that being said, guys, let's just jump right into it. Donkey Kong Bananza. This is the latest from the team that gave us Super Mario Odyssey. This is the second launch title, if you will, for the Nintendo Switch 2, so the Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive, and we've all been playing it. So let's go just quick round robin. Matthew, how much have you been able to play, and what's your history with the Donkey Kong franchise up to this point?
So I have played about 7 hours of Donkey Kong Bananza. I'm in the third world, or third tier, third layer. I forget the terminology.
The sub layer.
Well, not the sub layer, because the sub layers are there's multiple sub layers in each layer, right? If I'm getting the terminology correct. Because there's 100, 101, 102. Anyway, yeah, I'm in the third one. I've been spending kind of a lot of time just doing optional stuff. My history with the Donkey Kong franchise, honestly, I think maybe the Donkey Kong game that I've spent the most time with prior to this one may have been on the original Game Boy. Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of console exposure to Donkey Kong, so yeah.
Wesley, how about you? What's your history with Donkey Kong, and how much of Bananza have you played or seen?
So I have played and seen 0 hours of Donkey Kong Bananza. I've heard really great things about this. It seems that it's a nice return to both Nintendo platforming. Not to say that that's ever been, we haven't had that, but also a brilliant return to Monkey. My experience with the DK and the DK crew is, of course, the time-honored classic that is Donkey Kong 64. You can attest that we had some great memories playing that around the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, and that's where, I think it's a good jumping off point for me. That's essentially my sort of history with Donkey Kong is DK64. I didn't really touch the Donkey Kong Country games all that much. I was always kind of turned off by how difficult they were compared to some of the other, kind of classic Nintendo stuff. But Donkey Kong 64, Wesley and I put a ton of time into when we were kids. And so I was I mean, that legitimately got a pop out of me when they announced it at the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal, because I clocked it pretty early in terms of like the Mario Odyssey kind of art style, so I could tell it was either going to be a 3D Mario game, and then for them to do the reveal that it was Donkey Kong was like, I was so hyped for that. And Matthew, to sort of follow up on you, I'm in the exact same spot as you, so probably like between 5 and 10 hours in that third. It's the canyon area, right?
With like the smokestacks, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like just getting like I'm like halfway through that area, so I'm definitely I think I think it's apparent as I've been playing through this that the Mario Odyssey sort of like DNA is really shining through in this one, where it's kind of almost like my initial impressions are that it's kind of just that Mario Odyssey, but you're Donkey Kong and you can smash through the levels. Matthew, what's your like sort of like quick read on like the destruction and sort of like the level design so far?
Yeah, I think the game that this reminds me the most of is Deep Rock Galactic with the destructibility and the ability to dig and stuff. Like, it is, I consider it completely impossible that the developers did not have that as a reference point here. I mean, I don't know if they would ever admit that they were looking at some random third-party, indie/AA game to influence like their design decisions, but I find it unbelievable that they would not have had that as a reference, and that honestly is what makes me feel like it's there's just not that many games that do the tunneling and digging like that, and it feels so the implementation feels so similar despite it being in a third person rather than a first person. That's what I keep coming back to as I'm playing it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's like it's simple enough to sort of like tickle my brain in a good way. But I obviously, like, the deeper I get into it, like, they are starting to tack on some layers and like sort of like evolve the gameplay beyond. I was initially worried when I was kind of running around like the tutorial level, and that first level was like, oh man, like, I don't know how long just punching holes in walls is going to get, but I'll admit it is very satisfying.
Because it's a cakewalk, right? Right. That first area there's no real challenge there until really you get to like the second zone when you can feel them start to pull on it a little bit more.
Yeah, no, definitely. And from whatever, everything I've seen and sort of read about it, it definitely seems that like the sort of like a main story is intentionally easy. Whereas like the challenge sort of lies in the optional and like post game content. I think one thing that really stood out to me is how much the team really seems to be borrowing from games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, specifically like with the shrine implementation. Matt, have you guys seen any of this? Like seen any of these? Like have you experienced any of them? Because I personally think that they're really well done, and I think it works with the Odyssey formula.
Yeah, I mean the shrine implementation is very very similar to what you find in the last two Zelda games. I don't recall if Odyssey had anything similar though. Is this
no?
Purely
it didn't. It was
yeah.
It was. I mean, the Odyssey very much felt like the sort of like the overworld of Bananza, where you're running around and kind of finding the bananas randomly, the treasure, the fossils. I think that the one thing this game really nails is like the collectibles, but then I think one of the elements that they sort of layered on top of it were like these sort of optional challenge rooms that those feel very heavily inspired from Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and they weren't in Odyssey as far as I remember. They did have like challenge rooms, but not like, I feel like these in Bananza, the ones in Bananza feel specifically like modeled after those.
Yeah, and just for the listeners here, because we haven't really explained the structure. So I mean, you're in a 3D space, a la like Mario Odyssey. Your actions are basically to punch forward, punch down, or punch up, basically. And and then you have a jump button, and those are like your key ways of interacting with the world. And then they layer on some additional features where you can pick up a chunk of earth that's below you and either throw it to like make a platform or something, or you can eventually they introduce the mechanic to where you can surf on it, which I think is sort of that's pretty challenging. And there's a couple of the shrine. I'm actually not sure what they're called. They're not called shrines, but they're basically like Zelda shrines, where you go in and have to use that mechanic in order to get the bananas at the end, and those can be pretty challenging.
And there's an element, like a similar element to Tears of the Kingdom. Like, I think there's two things that I get from this that are Tears of the Kingdom coded. And it's the shrines having this sort of like multiple solution angle to it. I'm gonna just keep calling them shrines, but you get what I mean when I say shrines. But like there was one that I did today that was like a dirt wheel, and essentially like, what I was able to do was like get, like take the dirt, throw it, because the dirt, like there's elements, like another thing that we haven't talked about is that like, in addition to the environments being totally destructible, is that each of like, there's multiple materials that can make up the levels, and they each have varying levels of like density and like texture to them, and like that enables them to have like different properties as well. So like dirt is one of those that like you can throw it and like it sort of stacks on itself. So I was able to sort of like make myself a platform to jump on top of and like reach this collectible that I needed to get. So I don't know if that was like an intended solution, but it felt like one of those like light bulb, like, oh man, like I figured this out, thing. And I feel like there's elements of Tears of the Kingdom in DK Bananza. The other one is just sort of like, this game feels like technically impressive in a way that like, like it feels like there's a lot going on under the hood in a similar way to Tears of the Kingdom. And a lot of it has to do with just the fact that everything is entirely destructible, and like the map is really impressive. Just like how that functions. Matthew, what's your read on like the overall like performance and like the technical, like, how the Switch is handling it?
Yeah, I do want to say, in regards to your first point, I think there was an interview where Nintendo stated like, yeah, there are, you don't have to follow the path that we're laying out, even in the overworld, not just in a shrine. You can just dig your way to the objective, and you don't have to engage with any of the, the obstacles or other stuff that they're putting in front of you. You can entirely chart your own path, as long as you're not, obviously there are some hard barriers, but you have to, if you were to wipe everything out of the map, it would take you a really long time. But they have stated that they wanted people to be able to sort of break the progression in some ways, which I think is cool and very, very Zelda-like you mentioned. The performance I have been pretty impressed with. I definitely think that this is, it's a really great showpiece for the Switch 2. Obviously, there was a clip of them trying to run this on the original Switch, and it just did not work or look good or anything. It was just not possible. So this is a really good showcase for the additional horsepower of the Switch 2. I have gotten a few frame rate drops, particularly in the very opening area when you're like this in this like, Kong village that's populated, and there's like a lot of NPCs and stuff there. That was really the only noticeable area when I've gotten a frame rate drop. But overall, I think it looks good. I do wonder if we'd be saying these same things about this if we were playing this on a PC, because I mean the art design is cool. The frame rate is good for the most part. But if you were running this on the same PC you're running, Cyberpunk on? Like, are we going to be having the same conversation about the good performance?
Yeah.
I don't know. Are we grading on a curve? I'm not
I would
really
say
sure.
it feels like a modest upgrade from Mario Odyssey, where like I do feel like Mario Odyssey did a lot of like the art style and the art direction did a lot of the heavy lifting there. Whereas this one, I do think the performance on the Switch is great. I think the added bonus of just like it holding up during the really destructive parts, I think that's a really impressive feat. And like, yeah, I mean, like to kind of piggyback off of you and like the frame rate, the only time I've experienced frame rate hitches are like when the map is, like when you open up the map, because it zooms out and it sort of, I don't know, it sort of gives me the effect that it's processing everything in real time because, the destruction is also happening in real time. So I can see why that there's that sort of hitch. But yeah, I mean, I think overall, like it looks good. It looks great, particularly in handheld mode. But yeah, I agree with you that like, I don't think this is and I think that's a good pivot back to sort of like the design philosophy where like, I feel like this is a great launch title for the Switch 2. I don't know if this is a classic. I don't know if this is going to end up being like a 10 out of 10 for me. Granted, like I said, I'm still early on, but like it's kind of giving me Mario Wonder vibes where like I think everything is really like 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10, but like there's nothing really that makes me go, "Oh man, this is amazing." Anything like that on your end, Matthew, or how are you feeling about it just sort of overall compared to something like a Mario Odyssey?
It's still early. I don't want to give I don't want to crystallize my thoughts too much yet, but my gut is that I am enjoying this more than Odyssey. I think it really comes down to just how satisfying it is to just break through walls and use those explosive rocks to just destroy things, and how smoothly the world, like how smoothly it handles that, and how you can do that without any consideration. I mean, just punching through enough cannot be said about how satisfying just punching into a wall and digging your own like passageway to a cavern is. Like, I think that's just it's such a satisfying feeling, and the loop of there being so many vanadium gems to find in the world has proven to be a pretty addictive loop for me. Like, I was playing last night and like time was just flying by, like as I was like so absorbed in it. So my gut right now is maybe by the end, unless they have some additional quirks to the gameplay mechanics to throw in, maybe it doesn't, getting diminishing turns a bit by the end. But right now in the early hours, I'm very impressed and having a lot of fun with it.
Let it be known that it doesn't matter how advanced we are as a society, there's nothing more satisfying than devolving back to monkey. There's something really interesting that we're kind of tiptoeing around. There's a lot of comparisons between Breath of the Wild and, of course, Super Mario Odyssey, which we know the team that made that helped make this game. But I was reading an article on IGN, and it was talking about this game really came to fruition because, and I really hope I'm pronouncing the executive's name right, Yoshiaka Koizumi, please forgive me, basically went up to the team and was like, "Hey, Super Mario Odyssey is great. Could you do this with a Donkey Kong game?" And basically that's how Donkey Kong Bananza got made. And so what little I played of Odyssey was incredible, and what I've seen of Donkey Kong Bananza just seems like this team is just absolutely incredible. And it seems like a really good, like you were saying, a really good showcase for the horsepower of the Switch 2.
Yeah, my understanding is that like one of the directors on Donkey Kong Bananza was from Odyssey, and then another one was like, I want to say like an external hire that came in like for this game in particular. So yeah, I think it's interesting because it's been, I think this may get glossed over, but like it's been 20 years since there was a first-party Donkey Kong game. It was Donkey Kong
I think it was
Jungle
Donkey
Beat.
Kong Beat.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, with the bongos. I mean, which...
You have to...
Well, there was... Wait, sorry. Say that again. When was the last Donkey Kong game?
No, 20 years.
It was, 2004. Donkey Kong Jungle Beat.
There was one on the Wii U as well, wasn't there? Or no, I guess that's Donkey Kong. Yeah, it was like a remake, I guess. So yeah, I mean, but like I was thinking like Tropical Freeze.
Tropical Freeze was and it was a remake. And I think when they say like first party, like it internally developed at Nintendo. I don't know if Tropical Freeze was. We can.
Oh yeah, they were an external hire, and I mean to be fair too, Donkey Kong 64 was Rare, so that wasn't even like internal Nintendo either. So yeah, I mean like seems like Nintendo has like an aversion to developing first party Donkey Kong games these days.
Well, I mean, you got to think about the fact that like Nintendo has so many like properties that they can do, and like. Obviously, the top two are Zelda and Mario, but yeah, it's sort of like they do kind of it does seem like it's been a long time coming that Donkey Kong got some love and some recognition. I do wonder why they seem hesitant to do more titles with a lot of their more unique properties. Like, hey, when are we going to get some more Ice Climbers?
Yeah, and that's the most popular, really. I mean, Ice Climbers, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
But in that regard, like, you can go down if you're looking at like the roster of like the last Super Smash Brothers game, like there are a ton of characters like, hey, when was their last game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of speaks to one, the increased like development timelines, how long it takes to make a game, the budget that it takes to make them. And I mean, I guess the other side of this is that they used the Mario team, the 3D Mario team to make this Donkey Kong game. Does that mean we are not going to get a 3D Mario game this generation maybe, or at least until the very end of the Switch 2 generation at this point? I mean, unless there's something else being developed in parallel, it was probably a trade-off, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be, because, this, Odyssey came out 2017, so that puts it, that was an 8-year dev cycle for them, so yeah, there's a very real possibility. It'll be interesting to see, because, we've got Metroid Prime 4 coming out, so, that was supposed to be a Switch 1 title, so then does that pull Retro out of commission, because I know they had to step in to sort of land that plane. We've heard rumblings, and by we, I mean my wife has heard rumblings of an Animal Crossing game, just from scuttlebutt on the internet, like that they might be, that might be, and that sort of lines up, right? 2020, Animal Crossing came out in 2020, so, 5 years seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what the Switch 2 lineup looks like. But that sort of gives us a good segue here to talk about sort of the Switch 2 and where things stand after Donkey Kong Bananza, because, Matthew, you got your Switch 2 either right at launch or shortly after it. We got one, about a month or so ago. So we've both been putting, I'd say a good amount of time into our Switch 2s so far. Where are you at, with the Switch 2 sort of, 2 months in at this point, between Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bananza?
I mean, my stance doesn't change a whole lot. I mean, I think this is an excellent complement to the Mario Kart World. I think with these two big first-party games, you couldn't really, if you look back at the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5 launch, I mean, the days of a console manufacturer coming out and having like 4 or 5 brand new first party games within a month of release is just that those days are kind of over, it seems. Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, I mean, given the kind of what the landscape looks like and how Sony and Microsoft handled their own launches, almost 5 years ago at this point, I think that this ends up looking pretty solid in my opinion. I mean, both Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong are absolute winners in my book. So yeah, that should definitely tie them over to the next big release in Metroid Prime.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of like, to speak to that, like, I kind of like this thing that Nintendo's got, where it's not like, hey, like, here's all 5 of our launch titles, and you're not going to hear from us for 6 months. They've kind of perfected this sort of like slow trickle of new releases, where like, yep, like June was all about Mario Kart. Now July, going into August will be sort of dominated by DK, and then early September, boom, is Metroid Prime 4, and there you've got, presumably 3 like really good high quality first party games, all in beloved franchises. And that's not to say anything about Pokemon Z to A that's coming out this year. And we're recording this on the day that the Pokemon Presents aired. I don't know if either of you guys noticed this, but they also announced a Pokemon Z to A Switch 2 bundle in a similar style as the Mario Kart World one. So it's kind of like they're leaning into this element of like, yep, like you want to switch 2 with this game? Boom, here you go. You want to switch 2 with this game? I wouldn't be shocked if, well, they would have announced it by this point, but I wouldn't be shocked if they do it with more games down the road. It seems like they're really sort of emphasizing like the pack-in.
Yeah, and I mean, it also begs the question of like, well, if they're doing a bundle for Pokemon Z to A, is that going to be a $80 game like Mario Kart World was, or like how's the pricing work there? Like if you're going to buy all these games, I didn't
look at the.
Yeah, I didn't. I know the bundle is the same price as the Mario Kart World bundle, but I haven't looked at the price of Pokemon Z to A standalone. But yeah, like it becomes a math thing. Like, well, if Mario Kart World is the only $80 game, then you might as well get that bundle, because if you're gonna buy all the games anyway, you're gonna get a better discount by buying that one. But yeah, no, it's this year is shaping up to have a really good Nintendo lineup, and you have to wonder how much of that was intentional and how much of that was just like, circumstance by things not really coming together for the last, year, maybe 2 years of the Switch 1, where they just finally threw up their hands and were like, well, we guess the Switch 2 or the Switch 1 is doing okay, and then we're gonna save some of these titles and kind of have a big debut for the Switch 2.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think looking back to, what were like the last 4 releases on the Switch 1, where it was like, the Mario and Luigi Brothership and the Princess Peach Showtime, and like, it definitely had that feel of like, yep, like the big guns are coming. Right. And it definitely feels like it, this first year of the Switch 2 is going to emulate how the Switch 1 was, where it seems like a lot of the big first party titles we're going to be seeing, or at least from like the main development studios, we're going to be seeing within the next year and a half.
For sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, I'm thrilled with my Switch 2. Overall, like the hardware, I think just overall it feels like a little bit more premium. It feels more durable. The new Joy-Con look great. So I mean, I think overall, like, I'm really happy with it. I wanted to hold off, specifically for Donkey Kong, but I still like am in like sort of wait and see mode to see what Nintendo has got beyond this year. I think, like I'm super stoked for Metroid Prime 4, but I think, beyond that, I'm like, okay, what's the next big sort of, exclusive? So that sort of felt selfish of me to say. But I want a new Animal Crossing game. That's it. And like what does the next mainline Pokemon game look like? So yeah. So we'll see. Wesley, any closing thoughts on Switch 2 before we go off to break?
I think kind of echoing what you're saying is that we got Mario Kart. We've got Donkey Kong Bananza, and of course we got Metroid coming out soon. I'm hopeful that at least towards the third quarter, maybe fourth quarter, we're going to see some bigger announcements of like, hey, next year, like, your 2026 is going to be jam-packed with some Switch titles. I doubt it, but I would love to see a Mario Party game. I would love to see a first look of that before the end of 2025.
Yeah, because right now they're porting over the Jamboree from the Switch One, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what, like, yeah, I don't know, like, really in a similar vein, I was thinking of like Mario Tennis, but I forget what that team did. But yeah, needless to say, like, there's a lot to look forward to, with all things Nintendo. I think, like, echoing what you said, Matthew, I think Mario Kart World, I really came around on that. And Donkey Kong, I think both of those are just like two really strong launch titles. So I think Nintendo is primed for a very similar run with the Switch 2 that what they had with the Switch 1. So yeah, we're going to head to break now, guys. And when we come back, we are going to run through what we've been killing time with on our own. And we will see you on the other side. And we're back. And I am going to kick off our rotating segment, what we've been killing time with. I don't know what we're going to call it. Like, quick hits, what we're killing time with, we're workshopping it. But essentially what we're going to do is just going to go round robin, highlight one thing that each of us have been doing sort of individually to kill time. And mine is sort of the big one. I went to go see Superman in IMAX, James Gunn's Superman in IMAX. It was kind of everything I wanted it to be, and then some. I cried real tears. It was the first IMAX showing I had been to in a long time, so just sort of like an incredible experience all around. Wesley, you mentioned you had questions for me, so I'll just sort of open up the floor to you, please.
And we'll say up front, there's no spoilers beyond like what was seen in trailers, or like where are we drawing the line here?
We don't talk about Clark Kent being Superman. Fuck!
Yeah.
Shit. Sorry, guys. All right. Okay. Give me a sec. I'm gonna. Gotta play the Popeye music in the background.
This is why we don't let Wesley host.
Absolutely not. Never. All right. Neil, you saw Superman in IMAX. I'm a little jealous. My first question is, seeing this film in IMAX, you haven't seen an IMAX film in quite some time. Did it kind of revive your love of like, oh yeah, I should start seeing more of these movies in IMAX again?
No, because they're overpriced. But I will say that it was worth the price of admission, specifically for this one. The visual effects were outstanding. I thought they did a good job. Like the creative team, like the visual team, did a really good job of making it look practical. There were a lot of times where I was genuinely not sure if it was if it was practical effects versus CG. So they did a good job. I think it looked awesome.
Fantastic. So one of the biggest, of the Superman, Christopher Reeve is kind of considered like the pinnacle of this is how you do Superman, and it was because of his personality. And from what I saw from the trailer, it did seem that and I do not know this gentleman's name off the top of my head. I know it's David Corn Sweat. There we go. It seems like every second he was on screen in the trailers, all he did was ooze a unique personality for Superman. Can you confirm, was he enjoyable to watch playing the Man of Steel?
I don't want to spoil the content of it, because it's such a good, in my opinion, scene that sort of highlights his character. But there's a scene early on where he and Lois are fighting, and I saw so much of myself in him that for me, like, Superman has always kind of been one of those characters that, like, he's just the character that you aspire to, right? Like, he's just the guy you want to be. And so, like, to see a guy who was approaching a fight about a sensitive political topic, as Superman in a similar way as I would handle it was like really, really kind of like mind blowing. So I have nothing but like amazing things to say about David Cornsweet. I'm not like the Superman movie guy. I've always, like, obviously, like the sort of like the score and like the sort of main theme will sort of always give me chills, and that definitely was a factor here with the soundtrack. But like, I don't have like a close personal affinity to like Christopher Reeve or even Henry Cavill. I just like seeing good interpretations of the character, and I think this one was it's a really good modern take on like what a modern Superman who, he was born in Kansas in 2000, so he's like 25 years old now or something like that, right? Like, this is what like a Gen Z Superman would look like.
Well, I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then I'll turn it over to Matthew. I have more, but I'll be fair. Who besides Superman, was there anyone in this movie who just popped out? James Gunn has this really unique ability to take characters that you don't really care about, and it's like, hey, now you care about the CGI raccoon who makes jokes and all this sort of stuff. But like, was anyone sort of, did that hit you with anyone in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of across the board, I think that sort of rings true for Superman just as much. Like, I think I was sort of surprised at how much of an ensemble movie it was. I mean, it definitely very much is a Superman movie, but I didn't, seeing how much the side characters did play a role. I wouldn't say there's any one that stood out too much. I mean, like Mr. Terrific, I think he did a good job. Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner was terrific. It's awesome as well. A shout out to Isabella Merced as well, who's just been crushing it as Hawk Girl. She's Dina in The Last of Us, and she's also the live action Dora the Explorer. Like, she has just been on a crazy run the last like 5 or 6 years. So I mean, I would say like sort of overall, like the sort of I won't spoil it, but like sort of the early foundations of the DCU's Justice League are all very, very, very good, and I think they pair nicely with sort of this take on the Superman who, like me, is sort of like a big softie, so they sort of treat him like that. So I think there's a lot of good back and forth between the characters and a lot of good chemistry. So I think overall, like I will say that this is probably my favorite James Gunn movie overall, even over Guardians 1. I don't know, I have to go back to visit it, but I think it's safe to say like he just gets the character. And then he just sort of, kind of like how you said, Wes, like he just sort of adds the ancillary, like he adds his own, like you can see his fingerprints all over this movie, but he does it in a way that still feels authentically Superman.
So that kind of segues into my main question here, which is, James Gunn, obviously known for the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but outside of that, like his film career has been mixed. Like he did Slither, which is the one that I remember. It's like I guess it's a horror movie. I would classify as a horror movie.
Oh, the one with the bathtub?
Yeah, yes. And the like not snakes, but just like the slimy things.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think he directed Scooby-Doo, but he was involved with Scooby-Doo somehow.
Yeah, he wrote it.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I guess when you factor all this in, does it, like, he hasn't had a whole lot of success outside of the MCU, basically. With Guardians of the Galaxy, that's like his big claim to fame. Like, I think if you remove those things from his career, like bio, it's not very impressive. Does Superman feel like he has found something genuinely new that he is that's like a winner, that's like unique and new, and he's showing that he is more than like his previous film history would suggest? Or does this feel more like, I need to keep making something that is commercially successful, so I'm going back to the Guardians of the Galaxy sort of model?
I feel like it splits the difference. Where I do feel like, he kind of has little, I would say, tips of the cap of like, oh yeah, like this is me doing what I can sort of get away with. But I feel like there's more of a commitment here to world building, since he's sort of like the steward of the DCU now. And I'll push back a little bit on his film career, because post Marvel, he's been on this like insane run with DC, with the most recent Suicide Squad movie that came out. He did like the Peacemaker show that's on HBO. And granted, this is all DC universe stuff, so we can expand, I would say, your criticism to say just comic book movies, because I think that's just his niche. So I think to sort of bring it back, like, I don't think this is going to break any sort of new ground. I think, if you're expecting a James Gunn Superman movie, I think that's kind of what you're going to get. I don't, it's not going to have a soundtrack that you're going to go out and buy on vinyl. Like, I think they kept it very orchestral, like they kept it very traditional, with like Superman, like Clark Kent sort of being sort of like the outlet for James Gunn to sort of like get his like punk rock attitude out on. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it, like, it is ultimately, I think it's ultimately a movie about the times that we're living in, and what a superhero movie like Superman, or superhero movie about a superhero like Superman would look like in those times. I think it is, I think we can touch on a little bit like the political nature of it. I think it is explicitly a political movie. I think it is not shy about who the antagonists are and what they're doing and how that sort of mirrors like real world events. So take that with a grain of salt, if you will. But, I do think it's ultimately, I think it's a reflection of how Superman would act in today's world if you dropped him in. So, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. I can't wait to see it.
Moving on, Wesley wanted to touch on a new tabletop system that Matthew introduced us to. It is called we're going to call it Cyber Plus Punk, just so we don't confuse it with the Cyberpunk Red tabletop RPG system. Matthew, I'm going to let you sort of set the stage here and like sort of tell us about the system, and then Wesley, I want you to give us your impressions on it.
Sure. Yeah, so basically this is a rules light cyberpunk stylized system that is a variant of it's a variant of Blades in the Dark, using the Forged in the Dark tool set, and yeah, it's designed for one shots specifically. There are some mods that you can download that will expand it into a short campaign type thing. And there's a bunch of more supplements that are coming out later this year. But the core game is designed to for one shots, and you play as runners who are on their last job before whatever kind of retirement they're out to look for.
Yeah, no, Wes. So I mean, or I guess Matthew, before we jump into Wesley's thoughts on it overall, you recently ran a one shot for us. So I mean, like, what, we're not going to get into the details of the one shot itself, but rather, Wesley, what did you think of that one shot?
I thought it was incredible. I have a lot of thoughts about this as someone who has religiously used the tried and true, like your common tabletop rule sets, particularly with Dungeons and Dragons. So it was a really nice breath of fresh air, and I guess I can just sort of segue into what I liked about this system. So as Matthew put it, it is a rule light system, and what that kind of translates into, that things that I got enjoyment out of, was when you're creating your character, for instance. And I was struggling at first because I didn't realize how simplistic it was. I was ready for it to be complicated and have all sorts of dials and whistles. But one of the things was, oh hey, you have a cybernetic augmentation. And I was like, oh, okay, so what kind of, in my head, what kind of augmentations do I have? What are their stats and stuff? And it was more like, no, you just tell me what you have and what it does. And it was just sort of like this, like that click where it's just like, oh, I have creative freedom as a player, which, for those of you who have never done tabletop before, which I do recommend, it's back and forth between a DM and you the player, and the DM gets to be creative and create these unique situations, but then the player kind of has to navigate within what the terms that the DM sets. And so with a system like Cyber Plus Punk, it gives the players more DM creativity, where it's like, oh well, I have this item that we can use. And it's not necessarily something that you have to do before you start the game. Yep. It's something that you can say, hey, I have this thing, I'm just not going to specify what it is. Am I
that
was
like that? the sole thing that like sold me on the system itself, was just the fact that the inventory was deliberately, like, you deliberately do not have an item in your inventory until you like declare that you have it. So you have 5 item slots that you can use, and essentially, and then you have like a bank of items that you can choose from, but you don't, like, when you're rolling your character, you don't like choose a starting loadout, or you don't have to like remember to bring certain items with you. Since this is sort of designed around one shots, you like sort of just say like, oh yeah, like I've got this weapon with me, or I have this item, and it's very improvisational. And like, as somebody who has traditionally struggled with sort of like the onboarding of TTRPGs and character building, that was like, that accessibility feature alone was like put it heads and shoulders above like some of the other ones that we've tried.
Yeah, it's fantastic. If I can sort of paint a picture for you, the listener, for what this would be like, what kind of situation you can get in, it's Friday night. You had a terrible week at work. You and your buddies are getting together to play this tabletop that you guys got into, and oh no, you didn't create a character sheet. That's going to take you a minute. And as you're playing through the game, the character sheet that you've created sort of comes in to where you and your friends can kind of add to the story, like you were saying, Neil, in an improvisational way. And I think, especially since it's created as a one-shot, this is the tabletop for the perfect Friday night of, board games with your friends.
Matthew, how was it, like, from a GM's perspective, like, putting it together? Was it like relatively straightforward? Did it like, what was that experience like on your end?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think for me, as running this game, having not run a full Blades in the Dark campaign, I was at a bit of a disadvantage. I had to do a bit of extra like learning and understanding at how some of those things go. And like, we didn't use a couple of the mechanics in ours, like a couple of the clock mechanics super deeply, just because, one, it's a one shot, and two, I was not as comfortable, just not having used them before. I was a little bit more hesitant to deploy them in like a heavy-handed manner. So, but having had one under my belt, I feel like the prep work, or if anybody's run a Blades in the Dark or a Forged in the Dark game before, you'll have no problem running this. And I think it's it would be minimal setup to get a new game up and running.
Yeah, I definitely expressed interest in doing another one shot and then exploring like doing a campaign with the system just because I enjoyed it so much. So I definitely want to do more with this in the future. And yeah, who knows? Maybe if we do end up doing it, we'll do some sort of crazy live stream or YouTube series and record it for y'all. Matthew.
Man.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Matthew, round us out here. You've been playing. Oh God, my screen just died on me. Promise Mascot Agency.
Promise Mascot Agency. Yes, this is from. It's a game from Kaizen GameWorks. Came out earlier, a couple months ago, I think. Earlier this year. This is their second game. They're a small studio based out of somewhere in the UK, I believe. Somewhere in the UK. Their first game came out back in 2020, I want to say, which was Paradise Killer, which was kind of like an indie darling of that year. And I was also a huge fan of that. But this game is a bit different. It's a different kind of game. So Promise Mascot Agency is they bill it as an open world mascot management game. So what that translates to is that it's a 3D world. You know, you basically drive around. There's no walking. The only way you're moving is in your truck. And you have all the trappings of like a management sim. And your resources in this management sim are mascots. So in this world, mascots are not just people in costumes. They are people who are born as a mascot. They're like not necessarily like a spirit or something, but they're just like mythical beings that exist alongside us in the world, which is kind of they deploy this both seriously and humorously throughout the game.
I was gonna interrupt you really quickly. Like I'm watching the trailer for this as you're explaining this, and like I just really want to interject and say like this game looks like complete nonsense. But continue, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean it's very
nonsense in the best possible way.
Yeah, it's very over the top in the same way that Paradise Killer was. Lots of like it's. So I really struggle to like have a good elevator pitch for what this game is, and I would say the same thing about Paradise Killer. But it's essentially it is a management game where you're managing like sending out your mascots that you recruit to jobs, and then making sure that you're fitting the right mascot to the right kind of job. Like if they want a cute looking mascot, you have to see who has like a cute attribute. But on top of that, like I would say the core of the game really is an almost visual novel style story. There is a Japanese audio, but I don't think there is English voiceover. So for me, not speaking Japanese, I end up reading this as a visual novel, and the story is more robust than it was in Paradise Killer, in my opinion. And essentially, you play as Machi or Maki, Michi, who is a Yakuza who's been essentially outlawed from his family and banished to this town, which is cursed, in order to make back the money that you owe the crime family that you're working for. So that's sort of like the knife over your head kind of thing. So like you've got to continuously send back money so that the family can survive. Meanwhile, while the rest of the world outside of this one town, again, that is this cursed town, thinks that you're dead. So it's also like, it's humorous because a lot of these mascots are like have funny names and funny stories, and like the writing, the writing is just hilarious. Like they the way they phrase some of these things.
The costumes all look like ridiculous. Like none of these look like, like I'm looking at a dude walk by that's like a literal thumb.
Pinky is is like your co-owner of the agency. And yeah, Pinky's fantastic. She is like so snarky and like, just always got something to say about everybody, and wants to tear down the establishment. Yeah. Yeah.
So absurdist humor, like management sim, sort of like it seems like it's got like a goat simulator thing going on here with like sort of like the wacky open world antics. Is anything sort of standing out to you, or is it not? What like where are you falling with it so far?
I'm pretty impressed. My expectations were very high. I would say my expectations may have been unreasonably high after Paradise Killer. I really, really liked Paradise Killer a lot. That's a side note to this, but if you haven't played Paradise Killer, at least go check it out. I think really like the blend of humor and like genuinely good writing that's like that's earnest is they've just done a really good job with balancing that out. You've got the humor the mascot humor balanced with Michi, who is basically living outside of the Yakuza life for the first time in a long time after he developed such a huge reputation as like a bruiser, and trying to turn over a new leaf, doing this all above board. Meanwhile, but still not being entirely outside of the Yakuza life. There's a plot where like the mayor of this town has kind of like run into the ground. So you're simultaneously trying to reestablish the town's, as a tourist destination and also just like a decent place to live, both to make sure that you get more mascot events to go to, but also just because, you start to feel a kinship with the people that live there. So, writing is really good.
Sounds a lot like Dave the Diver.
Yeah, I mean...
It kind of does, yeah.
I would say Dave the Diver is comparatively very light on story to what this is. Like, there's a lot of writing in this. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of side characters, because on top of the mascots, you've got, like, NPCs in the world that are the ones that either own the shops or, like, send you out on side quests that you can call upon later to be, like, what they call like mascot heroes. So like your mascots can get into trouble when they're on site, and you basically get into like a card game where you're playing cards to defeat whatever obstacle. And it's usually something funny, like, a mascot has to face like a poorly maintained staircase or something, that they're like falling down. And you're playing cards and trying to help them out of that situation. So, I'm probably 6 or 7 hours into that, and it hasn't gotten old either. So, I'm gonna keep playing that, and I would recommend it if any of that sounds interesting.
Yeah, that seems like a Wesley Rivera-ass game, Wes. What are you thinking?
No, I'm thinking that sounds incredible. I like I like management sims. In theory, they do fail to retain my attention, but the idea of like just how nonsensical it sounds, I really feel like I could lose a lot of hours to something.
I mean,
like
Yakuza, which I know you're a fan of, is not too far of a touchstone here. Like, because Yakuza also has some very silly moments mixed with serious moments. So I feel like the writing here is a bit sharper. Like Yakuza is very over the top all the time. The writing in this can be a little more subtle, but the humor is just as effective here.
Well, nice. I'd be happy to check this one out. The Promise Mascot Agency, right?
Promise Mascot Agency.
That's the Promise Mascot Agency, everybody. It's on Steam, and I believe it's just Steam, right? It might be other platforms.
Consoles as well.
Consoles as well. There is a bundle on Steam with Paradise Killer. We're not sponsored, but just if you're looking at checking it out,
give me my money, Gabe.
But yeah, guys, that's gonna do it for this show tonight. We appreciate you guys listening with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to us here on whatever podcast service that you listen to us on. Don't forget to like and share with your friends. Leave a review if you feel so inclined. Tell Wesley what your favorite color is. And yeah, guys, all of our social handles will be in the description below. Follow us on TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get your content. Maybe one day we'll post on there if we feel so compelled. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it for us. Anything to say to the kind people before we go, Wes?
Revert back to Monkey, play Donkey Kong Bananza, and Caesar will rise again.
And yeah, I mean, I think with that, y'all have a good night.